Dominguez said that he would use the silver box of his shell to remake the world. If you had that power, what would you do?
Panic, probably.
On November 3rd, 2020, I uploaded this video to YouTube. It's a cutscene from the game Shadow of the Tomb Raider in which two characters talk about the changes they would make to the world if they had the power to do so. You wouldn't think this, but I posted this as a reflection of sorts on the 2020 US election.
Oh God.
Sure, one's vote isn't absolute power by any means, but it's still important to ask ourselves, what kind of world do we want to see? We look at the world today and see just about nothing but negativity. Polarizing news networks and self-righteous politicians spew nothing but hatred.
They're not humans, they're animals.
A greedy society breeds a generation of cynics. Social media amplifies every tragedy, every disaster, until we're numb to all but our own personal shortcomings. These things all come together to create a sense of hopelessness in life. This feeling that whatever path we choose, good or bad, will lead to nothing at all. Something needs to change. But is such a change even possible? In Red Dead Redemption, the character John Marston is blackmailed by the US government into hunting down members of his old gang, one he left behind years ago for the sake of his family. He begrudgingly embarks on this mission, believing that if he brings these men to justice, he'll be reunited with his family, and his past sins will be forgiven.
I already have a life. Well, I had one, and I'm trying to reclaim it. Or maybe what you could say is I had two, and I'm trying to end one of them so the other can survive.
The concept of change is central to the narrative of this game, as John tackles the question of whether or not he can change, if he's more now than the gunslinger he once was. But despite John's efforts to change his life and do right by his family, we see a haunting reality unravel before him. He leaves the world around him largely unchanged. The first act has him chasing after Bill Williamson, only for Bill to flee to Mexico, rendering the first 8 hours of the game entirely pointless. John helps Mexican rebels overthrow their womanizing, rapist tyrant of a governor, only to see them replace that man with one of similar dispositions. The final act has John directly serving the government's agenda, paving the way for the destruction of one of the last Native American communities, contributing to their genocide in the name of peace, not simply for the country, but for John himself, as he finally completes his mission.
I have enough worries, sir. This man's problems pain me, but they're not quite my own.
At long last, he returns to his family, but it's only upon doing so that he realizes the cold, hard truth. His sins will never be forgiven. No matter how hard he tried, society continued to see him as an outlaw, a gunslinger, a killer. And it's on these counts that he was killed. The prospect of change, of forgiveness, of receiving a second chance at life after everything he did to earn it, it was all a facade, offering no more relief in the end than a soaked cigar in the rain. John's role in life has forever been set, and by extension, the world remains bound by its own cycle of ignorance, destined to repeat history as John's son takes up the mantle of gunslinger. Despite moments of seeming progress, human nature pulls everything back into the same pattern. Nothing ever truly changes.
We can't always fight nature, John. We can't fight change, but I can't give up, neither. I can't fight my own nature. That's a paradox, John.
But something needs to change. No matter who you are, surely you must agree. So if you had absolute power, what would you do? John Marston's story, mind you, is rather pessimistic. It offers no real hope that things can improve. This lack of hope stems primarily from a lack of faith. That's not to say that John doesn't have faith in himself, because he certainly does. But every character that believes in positive change, from Nastas to Louisa to John himself, dies on the sword of human nature's failures, as if meaningful change, even on a minor scale, is an impossible ideal. But this simply just isn't true. Even as the cycle repeats itself, there's still so much goodness to be found within it. In Frieren Beyond Journey's End, we follow Frieren, an elf who's lived for 1,000 years. For much of her life, she viewed existence with the same resignation as someone watching John Marston's final moments, believing that nothing truly mattered because the outcome of mortality was inevitable. But through her encounters with people who inspire, challenge, and even love her, Frieren begins to see the world differently. She finds meaning not simply in helping others, but in connecting with the fleeting nature of human life itself. Frieren, who has long outlived those around her, comes to cherish moments of companionship, nostalgia, and quiet beauty that she once overlooked. These encounters reveal to her that life's significance doesn't lie in achieving grand goals or pursuing one's own interests, but in experiencing moments, however small they may be, that are unique and irreplaceable. Even if the cycle cannot truly be changed, cannot permanently be broken, there's still plenty of good to be found in it. Awkward budding romances, beautiful fields of flowers, thoughtful gifts from one's friends, the promise of reuniting with loved ones long not seen. These moments, just like the cycle itself, are constants, and they offer a plethora of reasons to go on. So, if you had absolute power, would you break the cycle? Would you break the system, the world as it stands now? Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. But either way, that's a power you'll never have. Even famed gunslingers and magical elves cannot change human nature. So what are we to do? How are we to change things? What is there to believe in when nothing at all, good or bad, ever changes the cycle? These good, beautiful things I've spoken of are great. Without them, life wouldn't really be worth living. But is the existence of beauty alone enough to justify, to validate our lives, to give them the meaning we yearn for? No. There's more to it. There has to be. Sure, there may not be a way for us tiny little people to create any grand, system-defining, wide-reaching change in the world. But what we must do, what we are perfectly capable of doing in our ordinary daily lives, is to strive to create positive change regardless, not simply as a means to an end, but as an end in itself. For it is in acts of selfless kindness that genuine beauty is created, that meaning is found what may otherwise be a meaningless existence. So often young men and women yearn to belong, to fit in, to be a part of something greater than themselves, some cause they can dedicate their hearts to, something that could convince them to give up on their dreams and die. But there is so much we need to do in this world that is worth living for. And just because these things don't require the ultimate sacrifice does not mean that they are not important. No. You can't solve America's political turmoil with a wave of your hand. You can't fix any problem or achieve any greatness imaginable with a snap of your fingers. But when it feels as though there's no hope for the world, we have to become that hope. And yeah, that's an incredibly hard thing to do, to reject the pessimism poisoning our society. But it's perfectly within our capacity to do this. Perhaps not to change the system as a whole, no, but to change the lives of those in it. For it is in trying to enact kindness that beauty is created, and through it, hope lives on. These kindnesses may be small, but they are perhaps the most beautiful things in life. The act of showing people that goodness exists, that there is still hope for us, yet that there is always hope, is more valuable than anything. So in trying times like these, don't give in to despair. Don't lose hope. Make it. Don't look across the aisle with an us versus them mentality. Don't view your neighbor as the enemy. Don't dwell on what others have done to you, or what they are failing to do for you now. You cannot control them any more than you can control the cycle. So instead, think about what you can do for them, how you can inspire hope in the lives of others, even if you disagree with them. Especially if you disagree with them. Something needs to change. So what will you do about it?